Hello, everybody. Glad you could join us for episode number 29 of the Launch and Beyond podcast. A podcast designed to support you not only achieving great success in your business, but in other areas of life as well. A key factor in success is not only identifying how you perform at your best, but also how to understand, work with, and optimally communicate and influence the people around you. But not everybody's the same. A strategy that'll work for one person will totally miss the mark for somebody else. Many employers insist on psychometric profiling and personality testing during the hiring process to identify key characteristics and traits that are looking for in a new team member. Hopefully that'll help them with the specific role they're seeking to fill. Two of the most highly regarded and thorough are the DISC psychometric assessment, as well as the Myers-Briggs personality test. And while many entrepreneurs and business owners may not see the value in such thorough assessments, having a basic understanding of this subject and how it will help you, not only your business and life, can be very helpful. In this week's episode titled Personality Types, we discuss 4 personality categories that are simple and easy to understand. And when it's applied, it can significantly help you understand the people you deal with and greatly increase the effectiveness of your communication and influence. We hope you enjoy it. All right, Adam, if our viewers and listeners are at home, they may once again notice a little bit of a change in our sound quality and the visuals. We're continuing to be in lockdown 6 weeks here in Melbourne, and we're recording in separate locations. Now, our apologies for probably the last episode being the rookie sound engineer that I am. It was probably a little bit tinny at certain times. So my home office now is probably looking more like a sound studio, a sound booth. I've got padding around. I've taken steps to do that. So hopefully we're starting to rectify it. There's nothing like an in-studio experience. So please bear with us while we're doing that. And by the time we're in lockdown, I should have it really great and almost replicating what Adam does in studio when we're there. So glad to be with you again, Adam. How are you keeping this period, or since our last recording, I should say?
Yeah, not too bad. It's just different. It's different seeing and talking to a computer screen. Hence why I got glasses on. But like normally, yeah, as you said, like we're trying to replicate it as closely as possible. But it does give us opportunities, and we constantly talk about turning negatives into positives. So we've lined up a few more Zoom meetings with other entrepreneurs, other business owners, other people in the personal development industry. So we're really excited to get that, because we wouldn't have necessarily got them because they're not based in Melbourne. So it's good to get people who are out and about and turn this into a positive.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it's work and home and work and home and work and home and work and home. So nothing changes.
Yeah, and I agree. My just before we got onto the podcast, my son shared this video that's circulating around about Melbourne at the moment, and just the ghost town that it is. It's been voted the most livable city in the world, and there's something eerie about watching a caption or a video of landmarks around Melbourne that are just deserted.
Yeah,
that day or night you get here and there's people, there's activity, there's a buzz, and it's just not here at the moment. So it really hits home in terms of what's going on. And, it is what it is at the moment. And like you just said, we're seeking to use the opportunity to change the way we go about things, reach out to people who we ordinarily may not have been able to get into studio with us because of our schedules. And we've just adapted our model in order to keep moving forward with the podcast, but then also reach out to people who can be guests on our podcast as well.
Yeah, well, I when you said that, I thought your son shared you a different type of video, because there's a lot of other types of videos floating around about Melbourne and underground tunnel systems and all that stuff. So I'll put on my tinfoil hat soon enough, and I'll keep going unless you rein me in a little bit. But again, all we do is work and home and watch videos and conspiracy theories and go, what's actually happening out in the world?
Yeah. So I'm really excited about today's podcast episode, as all of them. As you said, we've got quite a few guests over the next few weeks. So today what we're focusing on is personality types. I mentioned at the start of the podcast that you tend to see this a lot in the corporate world in particular, and they place a lot of value in personality and psychometric testing. Anybody that goes through the application process here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds quite often, is not unusual. That doesn't generally happen at a small business level or an entrepreneurial level to the same degree. But it's really important that you understand elements of this, because it could really serve you and help you out a lot. So in a nutshell, what personality testing and profile is evaluating a candidate's suitability for the roles that are coming forward. So looking at characteristics and traits, but they're not just limited in their skills and knowledge, abilities and traits. It's about aptitude. It's about how they handle certain scenarios. So it's kind of trying to get a snapshot of how someone would be in the role that you're envisaging they're going to be in, really. So they focus on, as I said, aptitude and behaviors, but the Myers-Briggs personality type, which I talked about, there's 16 personality types and categories, I should say, around introverts and extroverts. And for a lot of people, it's like, it's overwhelming. They're like, hang on, what am I, an INFJ? And they just tune out. So they're very, very helpful, very powerful, but the thoroughness is what's quite often what I've found in my experience. People just dismiss it and don't see the value in it. So what we're going to do today particularly is take elements of a personality trait and test and show you how you can simplify it and use it to your great advantage, both in the way you communicate people and how you recruit people for your organization as well. Anything you wanted to add there, Adam, before I move on?
You're using a lot of big words.
Okay. Well, which ones?
It's early on a Saturday morning. Where was it? It was early. Psychometric assessment.
Psychometric.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me break that down. Look, because it's a valid point, because I don't want to lose people. So psychometric testing is really about, they're quite often question and answer, multiple choice questions. They ask you to identify, how you'd reach, how you'd behave in a certain situation. They might give you 2 or 3 examples, 2 or 3 options and variables, and they all may be to an element correct, but they just want to see which one resonates most with you. So they're trying to identify and tease out how you go about things. So as you said, it's the psychometric assessment is the name of it. So it's kind of like, let me give you an example. So imagine someone says, okay, you're in a train wreck. You've only got enough to survive. You got enough blood supply, for example, in storage to save a little kid or a 90-year-old grandma. Which one do you go to? So they're kind of
medical ethics.
There's medical ethics sometimes in them. I've seen them where they come in and try to identify your value structure, identify how you process the world. So they're the kind of scenarios where they're creating an artificial environment for you to show who you are. The profile I've done some recently, because I'm moving into a space, particularly in the finance industry, where for me to be involved with an organization, I had to go through that. So they can see what my strengths, I should say, are under a certain set of variables. And so they want to fit the person to that role. So that's really what psychometric testing is, to help you that out. Personality assessments are a lot more, a little bit different, because they're seeking to look for, what interests, traits that you have that may have natural affinities towards particular areas or interests and directions. So, like I said, the Myers-Briggs is the gold standard for a lot of people, because it's very thorough. And what comes out of that is, if you've ever done one of those assessments, or there's a whole lot of other assessments. There's another one by an organization called Wealth Dynamics, which is fantastic as well. And it didn't take very long to fill in this profile, but it comes up with elements of your personality that you go, wow, that actually is me. The other traits. And then it seeks to help match you with particular directions or vocations or interests or elements of a business that will really serve those personalities. So that's why they're really helpful. And traditionally what I found is most people in the entrepreneurial or small to medium type business organization don't tend to do these to the same level. And understandably, corporate, they're there's so many checks and balances that they're looking for, but a rudimentary understanding of personality types, which is what we're going to do in this context, which is probably more in keeping with the audience that we have, is actually going to really help you out. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that did. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, brings it up there. And that's right. And I'm totally open to the fact that there might be an implied knowledge that I had, which I don't want to assume. So what you did there was probably great to be able to force me to go back and define that so that people can move on.
Sorry, I'm learning on the job, so it's good to have a good mentor like you.
Perfect. So the model that I want to put forward today is a really basic and simple one. There's only four personality types, and we just use what we call an introvert and an extrovert as a reference point. So I want to imagine, I'm going to paint this model. Imagine you have a square. And Adam, at any time, if you want to jump in with anything, please do, because there's some information I want to get through today, which will lead into the discussion, which I think you'll be really involved in. So in explaining this model, imagine you've got an introvert and an extrovert. Imagine you've got basically a piece of paper, you've got extrovert on the top, introvert at the bottom, right? And you split the two in the middle. And then from that point on, you've got then another line that crosses it, so forms a T, right? So that's effectively what we're looking at, is we're looking at elements of the extrovert and elements of the introvert. Now, if you visualize, you've got a box of 4 quadrants. I want you to visualize a top right, a top left, a bottom left, and a bottom right, okay? So if you picture the top right, and I'll expand on these as we go along, the top right quadrant is what we call the socially expressive personality type. Okay, the top left group is what we call the amiable type, and they're considered to be in the extrovert quadrants, okay, generally speaking. So if you can imagine, the top half of the page is divided equally by the socially expressive on the right and the amiable on the left. And then we move to the bottom part of the page. On the right-hand side, we have what's called the driver, and on the left-hand side, we have what's called the analytical. Now, so we've really got 4 elements that we're really going to talk about. And just as a caveat, this is not to the level of depth that you will get in a Myers-Briggs program. But we have found, I've used this so many times in a lot of the programs we've run. I've used this in recruiting our teams. I've used it with coaching clients. And the moment they get a really good grasp of this, suddenly their recruiting process or their message, market to message to market, I should say, is so much more effective because they're hitting the mark very quickly with people. It's not a complicated model to follow through. So,
these will all be covered in the show notes as well for you guys.
Correct.
If you can't visualize it right now, they're all in the show notes. You did a good job at describing it, but just if people need it visually there, then we've got that up there on the website.
So it is there. So let's talk a little bit about these, right? So let's start off with the socially expressive, which is the top right-hand quadrant of the extrovert element.
That's me.
Okay. All right. Well, what you've just done, the socially expressive one, is pretty much it, right? So if I'm going to give you some qualities of what a socially expressive person will be.
Yeah.
So quite often, the life of the party, right? They're loud, they move quickly, they dress in bright colors, glasses. So you see them, they've got the red glasses on, the purple
glasses.
Yeah, well, those kind of glasses, right? They place a really high focus on fun, connection, energy, enthusiasm. They love to be the center of attention. And, any type of environment that they're involved in has to be fun, has to be energetic. If they're not having fun, they become disengaged. They get bored really easy. They're not interested. And you generally see this in a lot of people who are entertainers, who are actors, who love the spotlight, who love connecting with people. They're very people, in that regard.
Yeah.
But it's more about the energy and the ta-da, I'm here.
Well, I have arrived.
Okay, so you got a clear understanding of what the socially expressive type of personality is, right? Awesome. So I'm going to move over then to the top left, still part of the extrovert component, but what we call the amiables. Now, the amiables are really, really, when we talk about people, they're really people. They're very considerate. They care about people. They value relationships and connections, so much so that they don't like to rock the boat. They don't like to, like, hey, you breathe, I breathe, we can be friends. They're always looking for similarities that connect people, and they want everybody to get along. They want people to have fun. They're always the ones that are very polite and considerate, and really want to be part of a group. They don't, like I said, they don't like to upset people, don't make it upset, and always are very welcoming. So, whenever someone's new to the group, this is the person who will go over, welcome them, hi, great, whatever, induction, say, hey, it's so great to meet. Let me introduce you to everybody. They're the kind of amiable type people. So,
Yep.
if in our life we've probably come across with these personality types already, the socially expressive and the amiables, right? So you're going, okay, yep, I've got a reference. This is my friend John, or my sister Mary, or the like. So you suddenly get an understanding of what they're like. Okay. So we're going to look, now we're kind of going in an anti-clockwise direction. I'm going into the analytical, which is the bottom left quadrant of the introvert, right? So analyticals particularly place a big emphasis and a large emphasis on facts, figures, and data, right? For them, near enough is not good enough, right? So they place a great emphasis on precision, accuracy, and analysis, right? So they've really focused on the fine details. And, last week, Adam, we spoke about the caps that people wear. And we talked about the people who focus on detail. They're the ones that wear black caps, the ones who focus on your what could go wrong, or the analysis people. Well, there's kind of a little bit of an overlay here. Yep. The analyticals are the people who focus on the fine details. You give them a contract and they'll read every page, every clause, focus on company reports, spreadsheets. You get the deal. You get the gist of what instruction manuals. So when I get an instruction manual, I'm there going, do I really need it? But I'm not. But some great friends of mine will go through the instruction manual first, and I respect the daylights out of them, and it saves them a lot of stress, and they know what they're doing. But that's the analytical element of it. So they like to break things down. You see a lot of these type of people move into professions like engineers, mechanics, accountants, physicists, right? That kind of analytical mindset, which is a real value in those areas. Okay.
It's funny, sorry to cut you off, but I couldn't sleep last night. I was up at about 2:30 and I was like reading over this topic and going, I see myself in every group.
Yep.
And I know you're only 3 out of 4 through, but I love dealing with facts and data and figures. And especially with the COVID sort of cases, you've got so much facts or so many forms of facts and data, and I'm spending hours reading all of this stuff. So I might be the loud, boisterous center of attention some parts, but then I'll also be amiable.
Amiable,
yeah, and I'd welcome people in, and I'd like to make people comfortable. But also, I'm a very data-driven type of person. It's not my main focus, but before I make a decision, I've always got to get into the data side of stuff.
Yeah. And Adam, I'm going to talk about this when we go into the discussion.
Yeah.
Because, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
What will be the case is that depending on the situation, you can draw within you or from you any one of these elements, right? And I'll show you, it'll link up to what we talked about last time about the different hats. But fundamentally, you can be an element of all of these, right? But what it does, it just imagine you're one person and you tease out 4 different quadrants of every one of them. And actually, there's a 5th category, which is the spoiler alert, which I'll go through, which actually encompasses all of them. Right. So I'll come back to that in a second, but it's a really good point you raised. It's not, there are pros and cons in all of them, and there are elements that you can use those elements within yourself as well. So it's a really good point. So I'll get to, let me introduce the 4th one, the driver, and then you can start seeing how that's incorporated, right? Because you're going to look at this one and go, 100%, you're going to look at this and go, oh yeah, I got that. I got that too, right? So the driver, which is the bottom right corner, right, which is the driver, who's part of the introvert. are really focused on outcomes, right? They really want to focus on getting the job done, right? Just hit me with the short story, hit me with the bullet points. And I'm not interested in story, just get to the point. They're focusing on efficiencies. They can often be impatient and driven, not one for idle chatter. Quite often they're just like, hey, hi, let's get to it. Let's get straight to business, right? You see it a lot in business owners, CEOs. So that's the element of that. So they're the drivers, right? They're kind of like place less of a focus on all the other elements of we talk about relationship, but they just want to get stuff done.
Yep.
Right. So can you identify elements of yourself in that too?
Yeah.
100%.
The driver is definitely me as well.
Okay.
or,
all right.
or I see parts of me in the driver.
Okay, great. So let's because there's some key points I want to expand on all of these. But you're 100% correct. Is you go, yeah, I can see part of myself in this one. Now, think of it that under stress, under tension, quite often we might default to one more than the other.
Yep.
Right. So for some people, for me, it's the driver.
Yeah.
Right. I'll basically defer predominantly to the driver. That's probably, if I was going to outline, that would be my strongest point.
Yeah.
My strongest area. So I like to be effective, efficient, get stuff done, all of those kind of things. But what I've had to understand and realize, both in myself, who I need to be to the world, and also who I need to be for my team, I've had to go, okay, right now, this situation requires I need to be more in this quadrant. And so I can put my attention to that.
Yep.
Right. It's this is what that process is. So does that make sense in terms of those personality type and I guess the context of what you were saying before?
Yeah. Like for instance, when I go to the production floor, we were just speaking about this the other day with the hats and how I physically change my uniform when I'm on the production floor and producing. I'll always bring my own music in, because sometimes the staff like music, sometimes they don't. But for me, I can't work without music if I'm on a production floor. And I come in and I got jokes and I'm loud and I'm just building big positive energy in my eyes. And that's how I enter when I'm over there. But then again, you come back into my office and then I become a bit more of that driver and the analytical person. So I become an introvert almost when I'm back in my office. But then when I go back for a sales role, I become that extrovert. Like, I become really confident, borderline cocky, arrogant. And I'm like, this is my product and, it'll sell itself to you. And then people are just like, whoa, all right, that's a big statement. And I go, just try it. And then they eat it or they drink it or whatever. And then they go, yep, actually, we're buying it now. And that's it. So I can see, again, it's whatever I'm doing on the day. And that's what type of personality I select. And maybe when I was a bit younger, I'd be more conscious about it. But now I know that when I'm going to sales, I'm the big, loud person. Yeah. And when I'm in my office, I'm, a bit more analytical or a driver and going, which direction is the business going to go in?
Yeah. Yep. Great. Okay. So that really highlights the point, because it's not, I guess, a really key point. And I really want to outline some of these is, number one is that it's not, you don't have to be Popeye. You don't have to be like, I am what I am.
Yeah.
And what this teaches me specifically is that if you have emotional intelligence, if you have an understanding of situational awareness, you can draw out of yourself whatever you need to help you in that situation. And so in the example that you just outlined, you can be more outgoing in a certain environment, and you can basically draw different elements of your personality at different times. And it's perfectly appropriate. It's not inauthentic. It's not being a chameleon, right? It's basically basically drawing those skill sets within yourself at any one time. The whole purpose of the Myers-Briggs assessments is that it goes a much deeper level to help give you a better assessment. So some people would say that, the socially expressive is an overcompensation.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of entertainers are very introvert. They get on stage and they're like larger than life, and you think that that's what they're going to be like all the time, but they're not. That's actually a persona. It's a basically what do we call had a mental blank there. It's like an archetype or we've covered it before.
You can get there, Jim.
Mental blank. Doesn't matter. I'll come back to it. It'll get in there. But it's a persona that they draw on. And I've heard Beyonce talk about it, where when she got onto stage, she was a different personality type. And
I am Sasha Fierce.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Right. So she was adopting that basically that personality type, but in their own essence, she wasn't that at all. So that was her accessing that element of herself that needed to be in that certain time. Sasha Fierce is a classic example.
Yeah, David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. He had many alter egos, and
that's the word I was after. Alter egos. You've been sitting on that one. You've been watching me like a drowning man looking for oxygen, and you're just holding on, going archetype. Like alter ego. I'm like, that's the word I was after, man.
Come on, I want you to think. I want you to.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Anytime. But you see that, as you said, a lot of stage performers. If you've ever watched the movie Rocket Man, and you'd see that Elton John was having arguments. I know it's more theatrical in the movie, but he was having an argument just outside the curtain before he actually walked on to have his biggest show at Dodger Stadium. And you just go, well, the second he walked out, he was Elton John. Yeah. But when he was back there, he was arguing. He was going, what's the business like? Why is it this and that? And my management's shit. And not even 30 seconds later, he's on rocking a show in front of a stadium full of packed people. So that persona does come out in different people. And I find it when I'm on stage as well. I'll be up there and I'll be myself sometimes, just cooking to an audience of a few hundred people. And I'm there, I'm making my own talk with myself. I'm asking questions. I'm big, loud. And then I come off the stage and people come and talk to me. And they're like, oh, wow, that was so fun. So, interesting. I learned so much. And I'm sitting there really humble and almost like, oh, I don't deserve any of this this praise. Like not to the point of imposter syndrome. It's more the fact that I'm just sitting there going, oh, yeah, that's me working up there. And that's my work persona. And then I come down and I'm like, this is the true me. Like now, up there is just a accentuation of my character.
There's elements you draw out of yourself. And like I said, they can be, as you said, a persona that you adopt that is appropriate for what you need as an outcome. But this shows when people can do that, that highlights exactly, I guess the power each and every one of us has to draw what was required of the situation accordingly. So this is really what that element is. It says, there's elements of this in all of us. Some people choose to focus and by default are more one than the other, but it doesn't mean you can't use all of them.
Yeah.
Right. So, so let's expand on this quite a bit to show us the application of how people can use this in their life and business. So while it's a summary, if you can understand personality types, even in this basic level, when you'll understand yourself better, like you just explained for you there, Adam. You'll understand your team better and also the people you engage with. So, for example, if you're recruiting, and we'll give examples of each and every one of these points. So if you're recruiting someone who is by nature a socially expressive, life of the party person, would you necessarily put him in charge of accounts?
Right. No, not me. Not personally, I wouldn't.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Why not? Why not?
I think it's not their best purpose being served. Someone who naturally needs to be around people or naturally enjoys, maybe not performing, but they enjoy the interaction with other people.
Yeah.
Being in accounts, behind a desk, behind a computer, behind pen and paper, it's not going to fulfill them. So every day they're going to turn up, they're going to drag their feet. And some people, as you say, we can turn it around. But a lot of the people, if they're put in the wrong spot, you see this in sports a lot of the time. If someone grew up in the junior years playing a forward role, and then they make it to the big time and they get put in a defensive role, they don't like playing there. And then they change
Yep.
clubs because they're not performing at that club. They go to a different club, and then all of a sudden, the new coach goes, "Oh, you played as a forward in your junior years. Let's put you back there. That's what you were recruited for." And then all of a sudden, they become a dominant player again, and you're just like, "Well, you're playing to your strengths." So I wouldn't put someone who's a big showman or what was the term, socially expressive person into an accounts team, because they're not going to be doing the role that they were born for, or
Yep.
that would necessarily give them fulfillment.
Great. Okay, that's exactly the whole point, right? So
Yep.
this is where in recruiting it's really helpful. For example, where you identify those traits. So this type of socially expressive person would make a great host.
Yeah.
You know, like at events, or a great maitre d',
Yeah.
or someone who is a performer. That's the kind of very theatrical, very expressive. Someone who's, you can imagine, I love going to live shows,
Yeah.
whether it's but theater and stuff. And you've got these really theatrical based, over the top, like they're fantastic. They
Yeah.
add so much to the experience. And so these people whose talents are lost if they're in front of accounts receivable or outstanding accounts or the complaints department, right? You're going to lose them. They're going to be bored, and eventually they're going to go, "There's no fun here."
Yeah.
Right? I can't be my known personality. So part of the key and important is identifying what particular needs people have in those quadrants to help them thrive in those quadrants. So let's just for a moment, um, pretend that you're one or the other, right? Just for a moment, you look at this and go, if you had someone who was 100% socially expressive and you were recruiting them to your team, you're putting them in a particular role in your team, or you needed to communicate that to them, you need to hit the mark for them. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. They're not going to get the best out of themselves, and you as an employer aren't going to get the best value from that person as part of your team. So it's really, really important in that regard. So same sort of thing. If you've got, Jerry who's an analytical, if you get Jerry to be the frontline person
Sales
of your
guru.
organization,
Yeah.
to focus on sales,
Yeah.
Jerry may be a whiz in identifying all the nuances that are fantastic at a risk mitigation point of view, but is ill suited for that role. So either Jerry needs to either not be put in that role, or Jerry needs to find within him the traits that make him socially expressive. He needs to develop within himself to find that within him to make sure that happens. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, well, one of the things is when you go into a sales pitch and you've got someone who's more of an analytical mind, they're going to come through purely with data. And I've been in meetings like that, and that puts you straight to sleep. All right, there's some parts of your meetings that you need the data, but those people who are typically analytical and introverted, they don't know how to convey anything but the data. So that's how they'll drive it, because that's what's important to them as well. And we're talking about fulfillment. So if someone's really fulfilled by doing data and statistics and analytics, that's how they're going to convey, because that's what they're really passionate about. But sometimes you don't need that in a sales meeting. So you've got to reposition them in the structures of the company and go, hey, you're really great at your job, but this is not the right job for you. Your resources are better used here.
Yep. So what's really, really important to keep in mind as well too is, let's say you're a person and who's in sales, who actually is trying to put forward a proposal to somebody to assist them and help them out. So one of the first things that I've always done every time I've interacted, whether it was in healthcare where we first started, but in coaching, particularly in proposals that I put forward, one of the first things that I do is make sure I get clear on what personality type I'm dealing with, and I defer to this one really quickly because it's got a really high strike and success rate. So if I know that I'm talking to someone and they're an analytical person, I need to know that in my proposal, I address the key metrics that they're looking for.
Yep.
if I am basically putting a proposal forward to someone who's more socially expressive, then I need to make sure that the presentation is fun, enjoyable. Otherwise, I lose them.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm making a proposal, put forward a proposal to a driver, I've got to get to the point, let them know exactly what the key takeaways are, make it short, sharp, efficient. And if I'm dealing with an amiable, I need to make sure I connect with them. I need to make sure that they feel that I care about them. They can trust me because we have connection. If I'm coming along and just hitting them with analytical or get to the point stuff, you lose them.
Yep.
So this is where having an awareness of these personality types really serves you to help you do what you do better.
Yeah, and that's one thing I find that I'm really poor with you about, to be honest. Like sometimes we'll send messages and I'm just like straight to the point, whereas you're like, "Hey, how's your day going?" and "Good morning," and all this stuff. And I'm like, "No, we've got a meeting scheduled at this time, and let's do this." And sometimes I
Well,
feel a little bit blunt and to the point, but at the same
no,
time,
not
I know you're
yeah,
busy, so I'm
yeah,
like, this is the information we need. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
find that and as you said, there's positives and negatives to this whole thing, and sometimes I find that I don't give enough of like the small talk, I would say. That's
the amiable.
yeah, I don't give enough of that
Yeah,
to people, and that's I can see that as a flaw to me, because some people really need that small
yeah,
talk. And I have a
yeah.
cousin who's quite high up in a company, a global company, in the Australian department, and he says the same thing. He's like, I've got no small talk. This is
Yeah.
me. I come in, I tell everyone the tasks, we have our quick meetings, and then we're on. I don't ask about their dogs, their cats, their kids, their wives, what
Mm.
they're doing on the weekend. I just come in and do what I have to do. And
Yep.
I see that and I go, "You're a bit of an asshole that way." And I'm like, "But I see that in me as well." So I'm like,
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'll put my hand on heart too. And it's funny you say that because I want to talk about this, but my natural default is the driver.
yeah,
So I've had to work really, really hard, exceptionally hard, to be emotionally aware that not everybody processes the world the way that I do. So consequently, I've had to develop the understanding of, because it's funny because in part of my teams, I've had a lot of drivers. I'm sorry, I haven't had as many drivers. I've predominantly been the driver, but I've recruited specifically for all the other personality types deliberately.
yeah,
And so for me to hit the mark, I had to be aware that at one point, I had 3 amiables on our team. And if I didn't do that, even though they were kick-ass people, I ran the risk of polarizing them and putting them offside
yeah,
if I didn't develop that in myself. So there's a school of thought. Some people go, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to be myself. You have to adapt. Great. And that's going to work well for people who adapt to that. But you got a whole lot of people who are excellent and maybe brilliant in a role, but because you're not prepared to take on board how you could better do your communication, you're losing them.
yeah.
And so this is just a bit of a reality check that I had to have, that I'll talk through as we're going along, which, I respect you going, hey, this is how I do it. Well, it's not right or wrong. It's basically just saying, okay, now that you know this, what are you going to do differently?
Nothing,
That's it.
nothing.
Well, that's
No, no.
and that'll cool. But that will mean that, okay, great, awesome. Well, you'll continue to get the great results that you are up until a point.
Yeah, of
And
course.
the greatest CEOs, the greatest people who influence people, are the people who have emotional intelligence.
Yep.
Yes, the people who are drivers that we traditionally see at a corporate level get stuff done, but they put a lot of people offside. And that, like I said, that may be okay. That bulleted gate persona may suit them, but this is more about an awareness to go, okay, we all process the world differently, and if you just take the time to understand, your impact and influence could go through the roof.
Yeah, and
So
I've mentioned it before. I've worked with some chefs. They'll come around at the start of the shift. These are, again, well-known chefs around the world. They'll come around at the start of the shift and shake everyone's hand and go, "Hey, how are you today? Is everything all right?" And they'll have a quick, brief 1 or 2 minute conversation. But you're like, "Yeah, I want to work for that guy because they actually care about me."
yep.
And all right, they're going to call me every name under the sun later on during a service shift, but right now they actually care about my well-being.
Mm.
And I find that's missing a lot from our industry specifically, and I find it's missing a lot especially now in this time with COVID, people are becoming really recluse, and they're not, especially in Melbourne, second round of lockdowns. Not as many people are checking in, I don't think. I
Yeah.
remember the first round, everyone was having Zooms, everyone was having house parties, everyone was playing online trivias and all this stuff. And this second round, I think it's falling off a little bit. So
Okay. Well, it's actually a really good point you raised, because out of those two groups, who do you think are the ones that are thriving on these current circumstances, and who are the ones that are challenged by it at the moment?
yeah, of course, you're right. It's the people who check in, amiable people who are caring about everyone because they've got sympathy and empathy, and they're looking around at everyone and they're going, how do we fix this situation to make everyone more comfortable? How do we, you know, the the main thing about this time is a lot of people are scared. They're
Yeah.
scared
Okay.
of they're scared of their futures, they're scared of a virus, they're scared of many things. So the people who are thriving at the moment are the ones that are actually caring about those people, checking in with them, making sure that they're surviving, they're in a good mental
Mm.
state, and then they're
Mhm.
providing them a solution, whether or not it's a product or any other way. But once you do, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And you've said this
Mhm.
many times. So
Mm.
if you're checking on people personally and checking in and seeing how they're going, that translates over into your business, because you're going to become more accommodating and going, all right, everyone's doing it hard at the moment. How can we help you more so at this time?
Yeah.
But the people who are, that are socially expressive and a little bit, I wouldn't say dismissive completely, but they're a little more dismissive or straight down the line, they're not getting the exact same results and they're starting to get
Mm.
frustrated.
Mm.
And as you said before, it helps you until it doesn't. And
Yeah.
that's about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. I think what I've identified and found out is that people who are struggling the most with COVID and the isolation right now are the socially expressive and the amiable people.
Yeah.
The people who can't get out and about, be the life of the party. They're not connecting. They're not meeting up with people. Yeah, they can do it with Zoom, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot of amiables that I know, they go, yeah, I have Zoom, but it's not the same. The people that are thriving, the ones that are going, this is the best thing ever, are the analyticals and the drivers, because they just get shit done. They don't have to worry about chit chat, small talk. They're just focusing on data analysis and getting stuff done. And so the introverts, in a lot of ways, funny enough, they're going through this isolation much better than the extroverts, because they feel like they don't need the connection with people to the same level.
Yeah.
So it's really, really fascinating.
Well, it's those same people who are the ones that generally complain to me, like, "Oh, I got to get up and go to work and stuff like that." Now that they're working from home, they're the ones who want this to stay the same. They're the
Mm.
and not the same in terms of obviously all the restrictions and everything, but they're happy working from home because you turn up, you've got the internet, you've got a camera, you can have your meetings off site or at your house, and then a minute later you're finished work and you're cooking dinner for yourself, like, and
Yep.
you're living in your little bubble, and the introverts are really enjoying this, whereas
Yeah.
me personally, the only Zoom call I've done this whole time is with you. Doing the podcast the other day, and
Yeah.
and I still insist on meeting people face to
Yep.
face as much as possible. And
Yep.
a, the people I deal with, a lot of them are just like, we're respectful, we're socially distanced, we wear masks. But a lot of them are like, oh, this is a whole bunch of fuss for not much. And I'm
Mm.
like, are you comfortable meeting with me face to face? And they go, yeah, sure. And I know
Mm.
that we're sometimes breaking the rules, but if we're following the social distancing, we both know that we're not sick or any of this. We wear face masks, we
Mm.
respect each other. I'd still meet up. We don't handshake,
Mm.
we don't hug. We just have
Mm.
that face to face interaction. And I find that
Mm.
I'm getting better results from that than these Zoom
Mm.
calls.
Yep, no, 100%, 100%. So that's like we were saying. The key points is, if you understand this, you'll be able to understand and recruit and help engage your team much better to get much better connection, influence, and communication, I guess, with everybody. So point two, which I really want to talk about, is that you, like I mentioned before, and you talked about that as well. While you may have a predominant default in one area, we can possess elements of each personality type We all have them within us, and we can draw them at any one time. So if you might look at this and say, okay, right now I need to be a lot more analytical. I really need to put my focus on the information right in front of me. I have to pay attention. I have to be more focused on the fine details. So you can draw your attention to that. And this is where, think of it again. Think of this in terms of 4 hats, and you can put a hat on and go, right, I'm the analytical person right now. I'm putting everything, all my focus and attention through that reference point. How would an analytical person look at this situation? And that is really helpful. So the key element is that you can draw out any one of those qualities at any one time. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's again, it's the physical reminders help me so much. Like, whenever we're recording a podcast in the studio, I never wear my glasses, but I'm still looking at a computer screen, reading our notes and all this stuff and checking all the levels. But the second I come to my office, it's like a default. I put my glasses on and I'm like, yep, now we're ready to get into work on a computer or sit and do more analytical stuff, it's just a physical reminder. Every time I come into my office, my glasses go on. They got a blue light protector, so I know that when I'm in front of my screens, my eyes aren't going to get fatigued, my mind's not going to get warped. But it's always just that physical reminder, just coming back in.
Yep. So you can be any one of those personality types at any one time. You can draw on those.
Yeah.
Okay. The third point I want to make is, and you touched on Adam, like at any one time, I've identified every one of those qualities in you, right? And so there's a book called The Synergist. It's called A Synergist: How to Lead Your Team to Predictable Success, by the guy called Les McEwen. And he talks about how do you own all of those elements. Now, synergist is someone who actually they can't differentiate any one of those. My wife, Bettina, who I've mentioned many times before, is actually one of these personality types, synergist. She's equally part every one of them. And what's really fascinating is when we observe synergists, we there can observe a model that can actually serve us a lot. So if you're really skewed in one quadrant, you can take the lesson and learning from the synergists to like say, who are they being at any one time? So they're a really good reference. So that they're quite rare by definition, because most people, according to Les McEwen, are more of one than the other. But the ones that the synergists are the ones that embody all of those qualities equally. But they're the most adaptable at any one time in terms of who they need to be. So like I said, I've identified every one of those qualities in you. I have to work harder to be some qualities than others. So for example, like I said, my default is driver. And I've had to really be aware of the aimability. Like by nature, I can connect really well. But when I'm in my own head and I'm really focused on outcomes, I'm focusing on driver. So the socially expressive person, I'm not that kind of person. I'm more introvert than extrovert. But when I'm on stage, when I'm presenting, that's when it comes out as well. So it's because I put my focus and attention on it. But generally speaking, no, I don't seek out the attention. But that's the part. I will do that if I need to. And that's the whole model that I've taken out of this, is that I can be who I need to be at any one time.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things that people need to remember is that when you are looking at these personality traits, and same thing as the hat analogy that we had in the last podcast, is you need to be truly honest with yourself. Like, be brutally honest, and you're not serving yourself if you go, hey, actually, I'm this person, but really deep down in your core, you're not that person, because it's not going to help you. And it's not wrong to be one of these and not the other one. It's not wrong. But
that's right.
You can be just specifically just one. It's not wrong to be that. But if you, as you said, if you don't want to cap yourself, or you don't want to limit yourself, it's better that you become a bit more diverse in your personalities, because you'll be able to relate to more people. And I know that when I walk into a room doing a sales pitch, if they're going to bring the CEO or the CFO into the room, I can back it up because I got the data, I got the analytics, I can be the driver, I can talk about the big picture, but then I can also be the salesperson and go to the marketing team. This is how I think you should market this or brand this. And I could be that big showman. I could be that really data-driven person, but that's because I was knowledgeable or woke, if you want to use that term, to work on all of these categories. And I worked on them without even knowing the actual terminologies for this. But I just knew that my sales needed to lift. How do I do that? And I was reading sales books. So I took advice from there. And then how do I need to work on data? And I've read books about that, and I've watched seminars, and I've countless hours on YouTube. And not everything on YouTube is real, but you take your little notes and your little particles of information, and then you develop your own brand and your own core personality. And so, you've got me hanging on the edge of my seat about personality 5, but I won't get in now. We'll wait till we get through.
That personality 5 really is the synergist.
Yeah.
Right? The synergist would be personality 5.
All right. Beautiful.
Right. So I don't want to hold you.
I was on the edge of the seat.
But that's really personality 5, if you consider it, as the synergist is the one who actually has all of those.
Yeah.
It's not more of, less of, because, I guess the point number 4, which leads me to this, is each personality type has its strengths and challenges.
Yep.
Right. And if you can adopt more of personality 5, which in and of its essence is the synergist, the person who can draw from themselves whatever the situation requires, that's going to serve you a lot better. That's going to set you up for success. The biggest, I work with a lot of highly successful people who really want to get stuff done, the drivers, right? I get it. And that to me is like, okay, man, I don't have to work hard to connect, to understand them. But what I work really hard at is helping them to understand the limitations of just staying as a driver. That's the hardest part, is to basically say, listen, man, you're getting so great results, but you're leaving a lot on the table because you're not prepared to evolve and adapt. So let me introduce you to another personality type, personality 5, which is the synergist, and help you hit the room more impactfully. And if you can do that, your impact, your message, your company growth, your retention of key staff, importantly, is going to be so much better. But because you're not prepared to look at that, stay comfortable, stay where you're at, because you're not going to grow in terms of your connection with other people any more than where you are at the moment. Yeah. So that's the biggest component. So, some of the, we talk about the strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to go through some of the strengths and weaknesses, right? So the socially expressive ones, Adam, we've already gone through. They're the life of the party. They're enjoyable. They're having fun. They're energetic, right? They're great to be around, these kind of people, because there's a buzz. There's a fun element, and it's infectious in the right, the right person. But if the downside for here is if they're not having fun, their productivity drops.
Yeah.
Their enthusiasm drops. And generally, the other thing with socially expressive people, their attention to detail is not as good.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the downside. So that's why we said you put someone socially expressive in as part of their compliance and quality assurance team, they're not going to have much fun. Their attention to detail is not going to be matched. It's not going to, you can just look at this immediately and go, that may not be the best fit for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I see that in myself as well. Like when there's, for instance, sometimes the packaging's a bit skewed, and I'm like, I'll go down and I'll fix it. And then I've got 30 seconds, a good run on the packaging. And I'm like, yep, that's it. I'm done. And I walk off. And then I get called back 5 minutes later going, it's off again. And I'm like, but I've just fixed the situation, but it's not stimulating for me enough that I'm going to sit there for the next 10 minutes and just make sure the packaging and the film is coming through properly.
Yeah. Correct. All right, so let's look at the amiables, right? Yep. So the amiables we talked about are very people-centric. They love connection. They love, they're polite. They're nice, right? The thing with amiables is that they don't like to upset people, right? They have trouble making decisions. If it means that it's going to upset somebody else, there's going to be someone at the effect of that. A lot of them are pleasers. Right. And so the problem with that is, let's say you have Georgie, who is an amiable, and you've got Georgie in charge of outstanding accounts. That's not going to work very well either.
Yeah.
Right? Because Georgie has to confront people, has to basically try and extract outstanding accounts that are like 6 months overdue, that they're not fulfilling that role. And Georgie, who is a people person, doesn't like to confront those situations. So consequently, that's not going to turn out well either.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And so there's another level which I'll go through with the amiables, but amiables are frontline, fantastic meet and greet type people. They're brilliant. They're generally not suited to roles that put them at the effect of confrontation, because they don't like upsetting people. Right.
Give that to me every day. I love upsetting people.
The analytical people are the people who we said have got a great attention to detail. They're so focused on the black and whiteness of things. But the challenge they come up with is quite often connection and relationships, because they're so focused on data, they put less of an emphasis on the relationship, right? So, and a lot of the thing about the analytical is that they're so in their head, they quite often, they disengage from their heart. And they're not as connected to what they really feel. Or you need to give them a lot of data and a lot of proof before they're on board. So they're not spontaneous, and that's fantastic. They're not impulsive, but it also makes it really hard. So if you're making a proposal or putting a proposal forward to people who are predominantly analytical, you better make sure that you've got charts, you've got basically statistics, you've got spreadsheets, you've covered every element to ensure that you meet the checkpoint of what they require. Yeah. And by the same token, the analyticals, you wouldn't put them in charge of, like you said, sales traditionally, or frontline meet and greet roles, because there are people who can draw that out of themselves, but if they're just living in that analytical box, they're not gonna hit the mark for a lot of people.
Yep.
Okay. So the drivers are also same thing. They get stuff done. They do this, but a lot of the times, I like to think of it as the dark side of it. There's kind of like the weapons of mass destruction, right? Their intensity tends to blow people away. They're often unaware of the impact that's having on people around them and relationships. And because they get stuff done, they're oblivious at what cost that happens to get stuff done. So this is the CEO who pushes his whole team or her team to absolute exhaustion. They deliver an outcome and then can't work out why they're all quitting.
Yeah.
Right. But they're like, but you're getting your bonuses. You got the results. I got more out of you. But if you had a team of amiable people who you were doing that for, you're going to lose them. So by just staying in that default, you get stuff done, but you're going to have a high turnover rate in your organization. So it's a really important component to mention. Is there anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, it's funny because when I had my bakery, the bread bakery, I'm obviously the same leader at the bread bakery as I was at the factory. And my staff turnover at the factory is very low. I've still got some of the staff that we started off 3 years ago. They're still here. And yeah, they're studying and they're doing what they want, but they enjoy working here a lot more than what they're doing. So they're like, I'm happy to stay here. And we keep progressing them along in the team, and you get your bonuses and all this. But at the bakery, we weren't having the staff retention. It was a higher turnover. There was more conflict. And I was wondering, what's the difference? But the head manager there was a driver, and he would happily work 12 hours a day, and he'd expect everyone else to do the same. And categorizing people into the same small little boxes, going, oh, you're a baker, you should be able to bake like me and bake for 12 hours long. Why do you need to eat lunch? Why do you need to, do this? Why do you need to do that? And he just couldn't understand that people are different, and you've got to be able to. Some people are more caring when they're making the bread, or they do it in a different manner. Doesn't mean it's the wrong way. It was just he couldn't see this, and as you said, it limits you and your productivity. And in turn, we had a higher turnover rate because of that. Even though
Yep.
I was the owner, and more of my time spent at the factory, so that's more of my home base. But
Yep.
even though I was the owner, the person I trusted to be the manager was not running it the way it should be run. And as many
Yep.
times as I spoke with them, they couldn't see their faults. And
Yep.
some people don't want to see it, and that's fine. That's their life. But don't be in my
Yep.
business anymore, and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really important. It's really important consideration in that regard. So I'm going to move to point number 5 of this, Adam, because there's so many. Like, this podcast could blow out for like days,
Yeah.
right? But I want to keep some kind of structure so that we still keep moving forward, but then also stay within a time frame in there as well. So the 5th point, I think, which is a really good rule of thumb, this is the one that really was helpful for me, is that the greatest personal growth opportunity happens with the person who's in the diametrically opposite box to yours. So, for example, if you're a driver in the bottom right corner, you're gonna be challenged by the people who are in the top left, which are the amiables. And I'll tell you why. Because the driver, so the amiable likes connection, likes to communicating with people, and they generally take time to build rapport, right? So when there's a driver who wants to just get shit happen, get stuff done, get to the point, there's no rapport. So consequently, the amiables don't tend to trust the drivers, right? And the drivers go, just pull the trigger already, get stuff going, hurry up, so you're at conflict.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to develop that part of you, like, that's the part that I had to go is, remember the movie Patrick Swayze about Roadhouse? I don't know if you ever
I
watched
love
it.
Roadhouse. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Roadhouse, right? So when he was a bouncer, he says, what about people, whatever they abuse you and tell you something about your mum, you just go, be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice. And to me, I always have that going on in the background, because if I've ever needed to communicate with someone who's an amiable, my default would be, come on, get stuff done, hurry up. But then I'll go, no, be nice. And so I use it as a cue to go, how's your day? How are you keeping? What's going on? Tell me about that. Awesome. Great. Your kittens? Great. Awesome. Okay, let's focus on this. And so that was important for them, because the moment that they had those needs met, they could then kick into being an absolute ninja in that role. But until that point, when I wasn't doing that, when I was just hitting them with full driver, they would just go, you don't care about me.
Yeah.
You don't care about connection. And consequently, they'd leave.
Yeah.
And by the same token, the amiables need to get to a point, at some point, where they just go, you know what? No matter what I do, I can't please everybody. So I've just got to make the decision and go.
Yep.
And that's the growth in part of them. The analyticals and the socially expressives, they're going to clash themselves, because the socially expressives is going to go, pardon me, the analyticals are just boring. They're not fun. They're not enjoyable. They just want data, black and white. And the analyticals are going to look at the socially expressives and go, dude, how can you miss this? This is so important. If you weren't so worried about being the life of the party, you would have noticed this.
Yep.
So there's so many. So if you want to develop a part of you, you look at the diametrically opposite parts of it. You're giggling there because it's obviously triggered a point for you.
Just a memory from me. It was funny because when I was younger, I spent a lot of time with my cousin he's the one who did quite well at school, and he's the one that is high up in the Siemens office in Melbourne. But yeah, he was like, hey, come along to some political meetings. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem like really fun for me. But, you do what you do. And starting off, I was doing commerce and all this stuff. So I'm like, I'll build my brand and meet new people. And some of the political students, some of the people that are in the parties, like both sides, doesn't matter which side, they're just so boring. And me, I'm coming in with my big natural energy coming through, and a lot of the senior politicians would come and talk to me over the other people who are actually studying politics, and they've been doing this for years and years. And they'd come up to me afterwards and go, how do they come to you? I'm like, because I'm different to all of you, and these people are naturally drawn to something different. And I don't know.
It's magnetic. It's like moths to a light, right? Yeah. They're drawn to the energy, the exuberance. People like that. It's magnetic. And some of the most influential people in the world are the people who have this aura, this persona, this magnetism about them. And if you're analytical and you want to influence people, you've got to find more of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. And even still to this day, like some of the MPs still talk to me, and I'm like, I'm just some guy. Like I'm not even involved in any parties anymore. But they just enjoyed being around that different, like you said, moths to a light almost. So
yeah. There's an energy that comes about with that.
Yeah. So it's funny. Anyway, I'm going to hold you up too much if I keep talking.
No. Like I said, because it opens up so many cogs in our mind. But that's the whole point, is just take away that the biggest area of your own personal growth. If you find you're in one category more than the other, look at the opposite category in that box that I was talking to you about. They're going to be the people that most likely piss you off. But they're elements of your own personality you need to develop if you're going to keep progressing and moving forward.
Yeah.
All right. So point number 6, and this is going to be a fun bit here, is our primary motivations. I'm going to ask you some questions, which is going to be really funny. We always do this when I've run our programs, and it's interesting how what the kind of answers we get. But number 6 is, the personality, predominant personality type, they're going to play out in the way you think, the way you dress, even in the cars you drive.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you can imagine someone who's socially expressive, already said that they're interested in color, they're interested in flamboyance. So they're going to dress alive, right? They're going to have rich colors. They're going to be expressive in their language, even in the terminology and the vocabulary that they use, right? They're going to find every element of a way to amplify the color and the richness of life, right? They value that, right? The way they dress, the cars they drive. So I'm going to ask you, if you were a socially expressive person, what kind of color car, or what kind of car do you think they'd drive?
I think they'd be leaning more towards sports cars, or something a bit more.
What color?
Unique. Something like a red. Red always goes faster.
Yeah, can I tell you that I run this scenario, and with almost about a 90 to 95%, 100% people, 95% of people say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's really interesting. I'm going to go through these as well. So let's talk about the amiables. So the amiables are going to be people who care about people, connect about people, are considerate. The way they dress may not have a political statement or a confronting statement that polarizes people, right? So they're not going to be the punk person who tells the anti-disestablishment type thinking, right? They're going to be the let's all get along, let's love each other, that kind of love, right? It plays out. What kind of car do you think amiables would tend to drive?
SUVs maybe.
SUVs, they're generally like the big
or minivans or something,
because they can get as many people in, right? Because they love people, right? They absolutely love connection and people. So they're the people who will basically go out of their way to pick up everybody. So if you're going for lunch somewhere, they'll go and pick everybody up in the minivan because they've got room.
Well, I got a 7-seater. You don't have a 7-seater, so I don't know what's.
Yeah, but these are generalizations, right? But 100%, like once again, about 90% of people come to that conclusion as well, right? Really interesting how it plays out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the analyticals, how they're going to dress and what kind of car they're going to drive.
Yeah, they're going to be doing their datas and going, what's the petrol efficiency? So they probably have a smaller car, maybe a hatch that goes, the fuel efficiency is quite high, and it's economical for us. And if we are a family of 4, we'll only get a 4-seater. For only a single, we don't need the 4-seater. We'll only have a 2-seater that's really good on fuel efficiency.
Yeah, because it's logical.
Yeah, it's logical.
It's logical. It's efficient. So if there was one brand of car that epitomizes all of that, what would you say?
I don't know. Kia.
Okay, I'll put another one there that most analytical is Volvo.
A Volvo, all right.
Right?
All right,
think
Volvo.
about it.
Yeah.
Because it's safety
it's
features.
Safest. It's the
right?
safest
It's
car.
efficient. Right? So that's what happens. So most people come back and go, they're more than likely going to be the Volvo drivers.
I almost forget Volvo as a car brand.
Right.
Sorry,
So that,
Volvo. If anyone sees it from Volvo, I'm sorry.
but Bettina used to drive a Volvo at one stage. I used to give it to her all the time, and she used to get heaps about it. Bloody Volvo driver. So she used to get that totally. All right. So
The last one.
the part of the drivers, right? The
Yeah.
drivers are people who like to get shit done. They're efficient. There's an area of, I guess, power that comes in that. So, you know, what way would you consider someone who's a driver to dress, to move,
Luxury.
Luxury is quite often the case here. And so a lot of the times people come in and go, luxury brand,
Mercedes.
they quite often Merc. Okay, you're having a dig at me now, but that's my default. But fundamentally, they're the people who go BMW, SUV, get shit done kind of vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So that's a default. So it plays out into, like I explained, that the reason why I've gone down the Mercedes one, there's an emotional reason, but it also fits my personality type. So to me, I wouldn't buy a minivan.
Yeah.
I respect that, but to me, I'm like, so there's the elements of what resonate with us. So that's just a little bit of fun, but it's really interesting that, like I said, I put it out to you, and your answer is generally consistent with a lot of the people that we quiz when we do our workshops and our seminars. So if you can pick it up straight away, how much raw data are you extracting about someone, about how they view the world, what's important to them, and how you need to communicate your message to them? If you can just do that in an instant, it's really, really simple, really basic.
Well, this is one of the things. Like I talk to many people, and they look at me and they go, whether or not it's in a work environment or social, and they go, "How do you just click with people straight away? How do you understand them?" I'm like, it's only really like 6 or 8 different types of people in the world. And what I mean is characteristics or personality traits. And as you said, we're hitting on 4 right now, but it dives deeper in who was the book?
The Synergist?
Yeah, the Synergist. It dives deeper into that type of thing. But you can categorize people. And like we said, with that car analogy, you can categorize people straight away. This is what they should be driving. And, you know, it makes it a lot easier interacting with people, both in social and in business sense.
Yeah. It generalizes, but it's a really good rule of thumb. It's really helpful. It's surprisingly accurate, and that's why I was saying to you that the real benefit of this personality type scenario is just how much more information are you able to extract just by understanding these areas, and then going, okay, my direction is going to be this way.
Yep.
So we got two more points, but we've kind of covered those overall. But I'm going to mention them as well. Point 7. It's an important consideration when recruiting team members to have a diversity of personality, skills types on your team, right? And previously we've talked about Jim Collins in the bus analogy, where it says the challenge, you know, the thing is you want to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people on the bus in the right positions. And this is really, really important. So when we've recruited for team members, we've had to be really clear on who we wanted to join our team, but what particular sort of traits they have. And so we're clear. We go, right, we need to recruit a socially expressive personality. And so that was the filter through which we recruited. Or we really need someone who's analytical in this role. That's the person we're going to recruit. And so that helps you have an understanding of the role you're fitting, but someone who's more likely to hit the mark. And it's got to go beyond the point of liking someone. You know, you can have an interview with someone, you go, hey, I really like this person, I'm going to bring them on board, but they're ill-suited for the role that you've got planned for them. Yep. So this really basic tool on a small business entrepreneur level, or even a medium-sized business, is going to really help you, because you're going to have more chance of attracting the right person for the right position.
Yeah, right? I agree with that completely. One of the, I think, the skills that have been lost recently is the fact that people can have open discussions and have 2 different points of views, and at the end of the day, you come out and with the best result. A lot of places don't have that because, as you said, they hire people that they like and they enjoy being around. And in the end, the result always comes out the same way. So what's the point of having a team? You may as well just have the same people or you just doing everything. It's good to diversify and have different personalities, different walks of life coming through with different needs, because then you can make either the best product or the best sales pitch, or you can make your company or your personal brand the best way it can be and grow out in that way. Diversifying is always awesome. And
So if
healthy conflict is good.
It is good. It is important. And you know, can you imagine having a whole team of just drivers?
Yeah.
Right? Or a whole team of socially expressives? You would have
straight in the wall.
Yeah. Socially expressives, you'd have the most fun of anybody, but you'd never get stuff done. Your attention to detail wouldn't be there, and you'd be so focusing on the parties, the after parties, that you know so like I said, I'm making light of it, but it's really important that we actually need to have an awareness of the different types of skill sets and personality types to complement every organization. So really,
you know how I get rid of that?
How?
I'd say leave the partying up to me, and if the people go, no, we can party too, I'll take them out for a night or two on the booze with me, and in the end they go, actually, we'll leave the partying for you, just bring them back down to
Done. So point number 8 is, I mentioned before, so when you're communicating, selling or pitching an idea, a product, a service, ensure that you know who the person you're making or setting that proposal to is, what rough personality type they are, and how would they best receive that information. So tailor your information proposal in a way that's going to be most effective for them, because ultimately, doesn't matter how great you think it is. If they don't think it's great, it doesn't fulfill what they're looking for, chances are they'll say thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, I've been in situations like this before, like working with large companies, going to other large companies, and obviously we go, when I'm consulting, it's food based, and I went to the meeting rooms and dropped off the dishes that I've cooked, and I was explaining it through, and my client, or the person who hired me to pitch to these new customers, said, hey, you can sit around if you want, just in case they got questions about the food. And I'm sitting there, and obviously the data needs to be hit, and you got to talk about the money and logistics and all this stuff. And then some of the people that were like younger, a little bit hipster style, and they were more asking about how do they sell it, and the sales team were very data driven. So I came back and go, this is how you can cross promote it. And because I do sales in my own business, I understand how to pitch. And then you talk about that, and then you talk about idiot proofing systems and use terms that are like really, they're a bit edgy, because, you can't really say idiot proof in a lot of situations anymore, because they're like, oh, we don't have idiots in our workplace. But you use these terms, and then they start liking it. They're like, actually, yeah, you're right. Let's do it this way. Let's do it that way. And it's almost like you're enhancing the meeting, and you help it flow. But if you go in solely on a data way of approaching the sales pitch, especially when you're pitching food, it's not going to hit people home. You got to, and we've talked about this, you got to bring nostalgia in. And if you're constantly on data, some people don't even have an emotional connection to it. They're like, it's all numbers to me. You can't pitch that. I can't get any emotion from that. So, you got to be open.
Yeah. So, Adam, great points you've raised. So I'm going to start winding down our podcast here.
I think, sorry to cut in, but I think with the Zoom, it makes it feel like less of a podcast. So I can sit here all day and just go, hey, let's talk for the next 5 hours. I got nothing else to do.
So that's why I'm trying to keep it interesting, trying to keep some kind of bandwidth for anybody else on the podcast world as well too, rather than just us rambling on. But there's some action steps that if you so choose to do, that would help you really leverage a lot of the information that we've shared from today's podcast. And so the first one would be, like always, review the show notes or the episodes if you like to get a more of understanding of the personality types and categories. And ask yourself, is there a particular category that you identify with the most? And if you don't, are there elements of every one of that personality that fits you? And that's okay. You may be in what we call personality 5, which is the synergist, which is that one that Adam thought I was holding back from, but I wasn't. So that's kind of the hybrid of all of those. right? So action step number 2 is, once you're aware of this, do a little audit around you and go, okay, what are my family members like? What are my people I'm relationship with like? My co-workers, my friends? Interesting. And they basically say people who are like themselves. So you might find you've got a great connection with a lot of people who are very much like you. Um, and just hanging around people who are just like you is going to be great, but it reinforces your own biases. And so if you're trying to get a broader view of the world, you're not going to get that. So it has to be intentional. You have to recruit or go looking for people who have skill sets or views that are different to yours if you want to have more of an all-encompassing view as opposed to the one that you may have. And that's not saying yours is wrong by any means. It's just basically saying it doesn't cover all dimensions or all perspectives. And that's the advantage of that.
Isn't that something? Again, I find that this is almost a lost thing. Like, if you're doing research on any topic, you should do research on all of the things on the topic. So you got contingency plans. If something goes wrong, how do you fix it? If you're constantly going, "Hey, what's the best case scenario?" and that's all you research in a topic, and you put everything to play, and then all of a sudden stuff doesn't go wrong, you're firstly out either a lot of money because you've pitched it as a product, or secondly, you don't know what's happening. So you can't troubleshoot it instantly because you haven't done your due diligence properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you surround yourself with so many people that are so like you, you don't know how other people interact. So you're, again, if you're going to pitch it in a sales point, and I like using the sales for this, if you're going to pitch it, you're going to pitch it just to one part of this small community, and they might not even want that product because you've made it too niche, or you're pitching it to a niche market in the wrong manner because that niche market doesn't like it pitched that way. So it's good to diversify and have other people. So
awesome. So action step number 3 is, now that you know this information, right? How are you going to tailor make your presentations, your communications with clients, customers, or colleagues that will amplify your message? How are you going to improve the ability that you have to sell your message, sell your proposal more effectively because you're hitting the mark for them? So more, I guess the essence is, how are you going to use this information now that you know it if you've never come across it before? Okay. And action step number 4, like always, we always try and give you some more resources if you're looking to find out more about this topic. Consider reading the book The Synergist, which I mentioned, from Les McKeown. Fantastic book. It's really insightful. It goes into a little bit more depth in what we've talked about, but it's very practical and it'll help you understand this topic even more. So Adam, just before final comments and close out, is there anything that you need to add or say?
No, I've said enough today, I think.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the topic. It was a good topic. I love breaking down categories of people because it brings to light how to deal and interact as a leader, as a manager, as a business owner, as part of a team, and give everyone a little bit of a break because, we all come from different walks of lives. So you don't know what has made a person a driver or a social, social expressive, or you don't know how people have grown up. So just be a bit more lenient and tolerant and understand different types of people. So I think character traits and personality types are always good when you're talking in a business and social situation.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Adam. And once again, thank you for basically being a part of this podcast for the two of us. Episode, as we said, number 29. So we're racking those up slowly and steadily. Hopefully the sound quality of this one is a little bit better than the one before. So just as we close out, I just want to remind everybody to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and our extended Launch and Beyond community on these channels. If you've got any questions about the podcast or anything that comes up for you as a result, please feel free to reach out both to us through our email accounts. Adam, do you want to mention our email accounts?
Yeah, so it's jim@launchandbeyond.com or adam@launchandbeyond.com. And
Great.
Yeah, same thing. Show notes are on launchandbeyond.com/show notes. So we're all up there. And we've got
Fantastic.
our Instagram, Facebook, as you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of times, a lot of the questions that you may have that people individually reach out to us for, please consider putting it into our forums. It's going to really help a broader group of people that may otherwise come about, because a lot of the times your question is one somebody else is sitting on, but they just haven't come around to that as well. So, and if you are enjoying the podcast, I know we asked a bit about this consistently, and if you're finding value in it, we'd be really grateful if you could go over to iTunes and leave us a review. The reviews are currency pretty much. And the better currency that we have allows us to reach a larger audience and help more people. So thank you once again for joining us in that podcast. We really appreciate you. It's goodbye from me.
Thanks, guys. See ya.